So welcome all the members of the Tulane community. This is a webinar on the spring semester at Tulane University. It's focused on undergraduates and their parents, but we also have graduate students on as well, though the sort of the structure of the spring semester may be different as a graduate student depending on the school. But for all of you, everybody, let me say this has been an extraordinary semester, extraordinary year in our country, and an extraordinary semester at Tulane University. And I want to congratulate you, the students of Tulane University, on an incredible job, well done, for, in a sense, an exceptional job. And thank you for all of your efforts. I know this has certainly been a challenging year in many different ways, but so many people, faculty, staff, your fellow students, have commented on the resilience, the grit, the determination that you've shown. And I know you've been asked to be masked and to be distanced from one another. Many of you have been quarantined, and we've asked much of your behavior. And the vast majority of the undergraduate and graduate students have really done an excellent job. The semester was not, in a sense, what you expected when you looked at your undergraduate career or graduate career at Tulane. But I have to say, you have done an extraordinary job given all the challenges. And I wanted to say that up front, and thank you. Just to give you a quick recap, we started out this semester underscoring that there's great value in on-ground education at Tulane. Not for everybody this year. We understand individuals may want to study remotely, but for the Tulane education, we felt that this was very important to offer on-ground education, but we wanted to make sure and keep the health and safety precautions at the highest level for this semester. And just to recap quickly, what we did, we started out with an arrival center where every student on campus came and was tested negative before they could come on campus. We've been testing rigorously throughout the year, but we've ramped it up after that beginning through pool testing, and we're getting close to having performed 150,000 tests on the campus at this point. This, we believe, is critical given that in what we found is over 90% of the people who test positive are asymptomatic. So it's very critical that we identify it, we isolate the individuals, and that really protects the health and safety of the community. We built 14 classrooms so classes could be distant. We had 5 other structures. We had a series of classes, some online, the vast majority on ground, some hybrid back and forth, but it was really a sort of a remake of the undergraduate and graduate education. And of course, in the middle of all this, we faced the possibility of 7 hurricanes. From the weather forecasts, we knew this was not going to be the normal year, but I don't think we ever imagined there would be literally the possibility of 7 hurricanes. And the first hurricane that actually hit New Orleans, the first one to hit since I've been president when I started 7 years ago. So obviously a challenging semester, but I think the Tulane community has really handled it with extraordinary dedication and professionalism. Now, what we want to do is talk about the spring semester, and just as sort of an overview, we're really envisioning that there'll be obviously similarities across the board in the spring semester, because in a sense, we think we have a very good plan and protocol, but of course we've gotten feedback, we're responding to advice, and we're going to talk about a number of those changes. But again, what's really, in a sense, the overall directive for us is the quality of the on-ground education and the relationships that are developed upon that, and ways to protect the health and safety. I'm going to give a quick overview of the spring semester, and then we're going to have three presentations go into further detail. Brian Johnson, Assistant Vice President Student Affairs, who oversees housing, is going to talk about arriving and the arrival center and how people will come back on campus. Provost Robin Foreman is going to talk about the classes and the classrooms and grading policy in the spring semester. And then Laura Osteen, Assistant Vice President, Head of Campus Life, is going to talk about literally the campus life and ways in which we think the spring semester we can work on ideas that worked in the fall semester. And then we have a group of people here to answer questions very quickly. Lee Ham, Senior Vice President, Head of the Health Center. Give us a wave, Lee. I guess Lee, all right. Anna Lopez, Associate Provost, oversees Faculty Affairs. Erica Woodley, Dean of Students. Michael Cunningham, Associate Provost for Graduate and Professional Students. And then Scott Timms, who is Head of Campus Health. So, and then Carrie Stockwell from my office will answer forward questions that you have after we've considered the presentations. Just to note, we will put up a Q&A, answers to questions, up on the web, and there will obviously be more information coming out in the future, but we wanted to, in a sense, give you an overview right now. So quickly, what's the spring semester going to look like? First of all, there'll be no hurricanes. That I can assure you of. That's over with at this point. We are going to start on January 19th, but students will be arriving ahead of time to go through the arrival center if they're on campus, but in testing otherwise, undergraduates at the other facilities and graduate students at the other facilities, so that everybody is tested before they come back to campus and is a negative before they come back to campus. We would recommend that everybody get tested before they even come back to New Orleans, just so they don't not in the situation as we saw last time when they come into the arrival center and test positive. But again, that's a recommendation for you. I should note that when we come back on ground, we are going to do very extensive surveillance testing, certainly the first 2 weeks, testing everybody 3 times that week. Our purpose being to make sure during this period when people come from all over the world and all over the United States to Tulane, we make sure there's no, in a sense, surge at the beginning of the year. And we have ramped up our capacity in testing. We ramped it up over the semester with pool testing, and we're going to ramp it up even further for next semester so that we really can, in a sense, identify any positives quickly. We think this is critical given how asymptomatic so many people are. And I have to say, we think our approach, which is massive universal testing and then isolating anybody who's positive, is really the best strategy of dealing with this illness. New Orleans actually has had a relatively low positivity rate as a city. Louisiana as a state now is relatively low as compared to the rest of the United States. But Tulane has consistently been lower. And I think that's a result of our approach. To some extent, I wish the entire United States could follow our approach. But it's a system of testing everybody and pulling anybody out who is asymptomatic and ensuring their care quickly. Protocols will be the same in terms of masking and distancing and testing and isolating. A couple notes that we'll talk about. We're upgrading the classrooms and Provost Foreman will talk about sort of our initiatives in the temporary classrooms. And we're exploring ways to test anybody who's in quarantine out quicker. The CDC has guidelines of 14 days, and we're trying to establish if somebody tests negative, they could come out quicker. But that's sort of a work in progress. We're constantly evaluating in terms of our experience how we can improve the situation on campus. I should note that in the spring semester, we're not going to have a traditional spring vacation. As with the fall semester, we don't want to send the community away and have them come back. That's the great risk. So what we are doing is taking the spring vacation and sprinkling those as individual days off during the spring calendar. We are, in some sense, restricting, as we did in the fall, access to campus to only members of the Tulane community, and we're not going to allow sort of outsiders to come and stay in our dorms during the semester. We really want to limit access. We're asked about Mardi Gras. Let me say the city of New Orleans announced in the last week that they're canceling all Mardi Gras parades, which we think is a very good public health decision on their part. There may be things occurring during Mardi Gras, and we're looking in as part of the campus community of ways in which we can have alternative events occurring, which will be safer. But the traditional Mardi Gras will not occur in New Orleans, given this the situation. We have continued the 2 days off on the calendar for Mardi Gras, so we're looking at how we might deal with that. Graduation. I'm often asked about graduation. We have graduation on the calendar set at this point, but we don't know what it will be. It could be virtual. It could be on ground. A lot depends on how public health events occur going forward. I should note in all of these decisions that we made about the spring semester, they're all subject to changes in public health restrictions, public health guidelines going forward. So obviously we have to be sensitive to the world around us. I would say we have a good working relationship with the mayor of New Orleans and the governor, who've been very good at protecting the health and safety during these times. I should note, obviously we're all looking at vaccines. We don't know when the vaccine will actually be both approved and when it will be publicly available. But that obviously, if it is publicly available and available to members of the Tulane community, that may, in a sense, allow us to change our recommendations and open up. I'm often asked also, what if there's a surge? What if there's a surge in positivity? As you know, several other universities, when there was a surge, sent all the students home or did a lockdown. We do not think that is, in general, a good approach. We think sending students home is not the safe thing to do, not safe for them and not safe for their families. And we also think that our approach of universal testing and isolating in quarantine is the best way to deal with the surge. And locking people down indoors, we also don't think is generally a good idea in terms of containing COVID-19. So that we have literally, in a sense, have what our approach is. It's not like I can say X will happen if there's a vaccine or Y with a surge, but those are our philosophies going forward. So with that, that's sort of a brief overview of the spring semester. Obviously, there are a lot of details that we can discuss, and several of the other presentations will go down into a deeper dive. And as I said before, we'll be putting out more information through other emails and memos. We'll have a website with Q&As, but we wanted to sort of get the broad overview and give everyone an opportunity now to ask questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to three presentations that give a deep dive in how we're bringing students back with the Arrival Center, classes and the dynamic of classes, and then finally student life. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian Johnson to talk about housing and the Arrival Center.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody. So as many of you know, you participated in the Arrival Center in the fall, which was very successful, and we had a very good run there. So I just want to focus on a couple of differences for the spring as compared to the fall. And one is, a key one is that students will be in the Arrival Center for 24 hours instead of 48 hours like the fall. So we're going to have a much quicker turnaround time and the amount of time they need to spend in the Arrival Center. Our testing will operate on site at the Hyatt from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it will also include the student education piece that we did in the fall for the students that come through there. In addition, all of our safety protocols will remain in place at the Hyatt, similar to the way we operated the facility in the fall. I think it's very important to note that we learned a lot and we were very successful in keeping people safe, and we'll continue that as we prepare for the spring. The last piece is I highly encourage all on-campus students to stay at the Hyatt for safety and expediency as they work their way through the testing piece and the move-in process, given that it is a quick turnaround time. So that we're looking forward to kicking off the spring semester after a little break, and I think it's going to be a good run. There are a couple of mechanical pieces that I want to talk about that I know that's probably on the minds of all of you. Number one is yesterday, Housing and Residence Life sent all new on-campus students and returning on-campus students a personal email about spring. In that email, it covered the Arrival Center information. It also gave tips about what to prepare before you arrive to campus in the spring. It also covered packing and shipping items for the spring. And lastly, it covered move-in day step by step. So what that would look like step by step as your student works their way through the Arrival Center onto campus. Later this week, likely Tuesday or Wednesday, students will receive a personal email in their Tulane email that will allow them to reserve their move-in time slot and reserve a room at the Hyatt. We will start probably receiving students at the Hyatt, a few on January 8th, but full operations begin on January 9th. Dr. Osteen will talk about the Greek life recruitment, which is certainly a big piece of some changes around the Arrival Center, so I won't steal her thunder. But the links will be an email this week for all the students to go ahead and make their move-in time reservation and their hotel reservation. Single occupancy for the Hyatt for the one night is $119 with breakfast. And then also if your son or daughter, if you're coming down with your son or daughter, parent or family members coming, the double rate is $139, and both of you would get breakfast. Or if your son or daughter is going to come in and stay with their roommate during that time, you know, I think we could allow that, but just know that if one tests positive, they're going to get contact traced. So something to talk about as a family as you prepare for the spring arrival. The last thing I'll say is all of this information is posted on the housing.tulane.edu website. It has a specific page for spring move-in. The final thing I'll say is if you have any questions or need any assistance as you're navigating this, as we work through this, feel free to email or call Housing and Residence Life, send me an email, and we're happy to answer your questions and work through any challenges as we navigate our start for the spring. That is it.
Thank you, Brian. Could you just comment a little bit about how, if you're an undergraduate student not living on the campus, or if you're a graduate student, how you navigate the onboarding testing?
Absolutely. So off-campus students will be tested at Phelps and Patterson on the Uptown campus. Graduate and professional students will be tested downtown or on the Uptown campus starting the week of school. So our off-campus students do not need to go through the arrival center because they will receive a time to come and test on the Uptown campus. And the graduate students will get their specific time and their testing schedule during that first week of school. So I think if any parents or students have questions about that as well, you can email Health Services, Dr. Scott Timms, or myself. Happy to answer that. And Dean Woodley can field those questions too. I'll throw her in the mix there. She gets enough emails. She probably hates me for that. Sorry, Erica.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay, now turning to both the classes, the classrooms, the curriculum, Provost Robin Foreman.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Well, as you all know, this was an extraordinary fall. This was a time of experimentation, of innovation. Our faculty and many of the staff who support our faculty spent the summer imagining all kinds of ways to offer the material safely in this challenging environment. And so we tried a host of things. I administered a survey to the entire community, but there were other surveys as well. We're taking advantage of all lessons learned to either fix or end the things that didn't work as well as we like and double down on the things that worked well. And we are improving the experience heading forward into the spring in a whole host of ways. Starting with the facilities, which Mike mentioned earlier, we, as I'm sure you know, we have created 13 temporary classrooms. But in addition to that, we, converted many existing spaces to classrooms that were used for other reasons. Everything from the basketball arena, which was used as a classroom in the fall, and we'll be using it in a limited way in the spring because we have to actually allow our basketball teams and volleyball team sometime in there in the spring, but we'll still be using it in the morning for classroom, to our chapel. So one of the things we're doing is improving the sound across the board. We tried a variety of mechanisms to improve the sound in all these classrooms, and some work better than others. So we are now doing a full review of the spaces in the temporary classrooms. We found that echo reducing sound curtains have worked. So they were recently been installed in every temporary classroom, dramatically improving the sound. In some of those spaces that were not classrooms, but are being used as classrooms, the AV equipment was a little old. In almost all of them, they'll get a fresh makeover in the space between the semesters. We found that one set of microphones work better to create better sound. So those microphones are being distributed to all of our faculty. We've already begun distributing those microphones. And so I think we'll find that in the technology of the spaces will be improved basically in every classroom on campus. The second lesson learned is that our faculty imagined all kinds of ways of distributing, of teaching classes, of creating a safe space for students to learn. Some of them work better than others. So the key point is we will have, as in the fall, a variety of ways of teaching our classes. Just under a third of our classes will be offered in a fully online fashion. Those are classes that can be selected by students who will be studying remotely from wherever they are, but are also options for our students on campus. And just more than 2/3 of our classes will have a significant on-ground component. All of those classes will be hybrid in some sense. And what I mean by that, for every class which has a significant on-ground component, it will be possible for students to Zoom in remotely if they find themselves in isolation or quarantine. And I think that worked really well this semester. Nobody liked being in isolation or quarantine, but students reported with great consistency that they were able to stay abreast of their coursework by Zooming in. There are certain kinds of hybridity that work better than other kinds. And so one of the things we're doing this semester is putting just about all of our classes in classrooms that are large enough to hold all of our students in a socially distanced way, so that faculty have full flexibility in terms of how they offer the material and aren't required to have students move on online if it's not their preferred form of pedagogy. We're also continuing our support for faculty so that they can learn how to teach most effectively in this environment. We've been offering a series of workshops and trainings for faculty since last February, and they will continue. But one of the things that worked well in the fall that we're doubling down on is this idea of Zoom producers. This is producer in the same sense of like a producer of the news, the kind of person who says, cut to camera 2 or camera 3, give me a close-up. So producers and the kind of folks who manage the, the media. And so we had typically undergraduate students, in some cases graduate students as well, who stayed in the classroom for the entire hour, 20 minutes or so, and helped the faculty manage the conversation. And it was everything from helping with the technology to saying, professor, we've got a question on the Zoom chat, and helped everything, help make sure that everyone got the attention they needed and could participate in the ways that they want to. That worked well. And in fact, what we've heard is more faculty would like to have Zoom producers in their classrooms. So we've already begun, this is at the school level, so that we're working with students who have some academic background in the subject matter. The schools have begun training and preparing large groups of students to prepare both the help in that way, managing the conversation, but who can also help, also have basic training in the technology. So they can help the faculty manage the various electronic gadgets that are in the classroom, from image cameras to computer screens to the Zoom software and otherwise. And then finally, we know that even with all the preparations, not every class turns out to be what our faculty and students imagine it would be when the semester started. And so one of the things that we just voted in, our Committee on Educational Policy just voted in, was the opportunity to give our students, let me say at the moment, and it's our standard policy, that students have the opportunity to designate one course, at most one course per semester, as a course that will be graded rather than a letter grade as a satisfactory or unsatisfactory. There are limitations on that option. You cannot have a course that is required that you'll be submitting in satisfaction of your major or minor requirements, and certain core requirements cannot be taken SU. And there is a limit also on the total number of SU courses you can take over the time of your Tulane education. But for this fall and coming in the spring, we are offering our students an opportunity to take a second course with a satisfactory, unsatisfactory grade. This is undergraduates. A second satisfactory, unsatisfactory grade that will not count against your overall Tulane cap. So this is, again, for students who want to experiment either in terms of subject matter or in terms of the type of course, the type of pedagogy, and don't want to, I want to minimize the stress of the uncertainty associated with the grades. This is a designation, by the way, that you will have up until in this semester, up until the, actually, now that I say that, I'm not even sure. I was going to say when the deadline is, and I'm not sure what deadline we agreed to. But I will say, I see Anna Lopez, Associate Provost, who's looking online to figure out what the final policy is. But you still have the opportunity to designate a course SU. And I saw a draft where it was the last day of classes, but I actually think we moved it beyond that. But I shouldn't speculate. I should just wait for the real answer. But that said, this will be students will enter the spring knowing that they will have this opportunity for second SU grade to help reduce the stress of this uncertain environment and help them manage their educational commitments in a more effective way. So with that, I'll stop and I'll turn the floor back over to President Fitz, and maybe Anna will interject when she finds the answer.
The date. We'll obviously put that up in the answers to questions. And with that, now I'd like to turn it over to Laura Osteen, who's going to talk about campus life. Obviously, this all of the public health restrictions challenge everything about the traditional relational culture at Tulane University. I think we've learned a lot in the fall semester, and based on that, we have some ideas for this spring. So Laura, do you want to talk about those?
Thank you so much, President Fitz. And I would love to start with an enormous thank you to each and every one of you. It is each of us individually that created the environment that we experienced this fall, and the fact that collectively who we are as a result of the choices we each made. And that is every single one of us. That is all undergraduates, graduate, professional students, faculty, staff, parents, and us as administrators. Our collective choices about how to act, what policies were created and enforced, how we chose to engage with each other, what barriers existed to that engagement, literally led to and shaped the experience together. And those choices are what we are learning from now, just as President Fitz mentioned, and just as Provost Foreman described, as we look at survey data, as we talk with each other, as we talk with students to learn what did happen well in the fall, what was most frustrating, what do we have control over, what do we not have control over, in order to move forward and to think about what better possibilities exist for the spring. I like to think about it as spring together. And as we think about how we come back together, our commitment to you is to examine 3 particular ways to think about what we learned in the fall and how it can impact our spring. Each of these 3 ways that I'll walk through is grounded in our campus, local, state, and national context. And so please know that all of these choices will be made with your safety first in mind and your engagement. What we have heard from you very clearly is a desire for a greater connection and greater possibilities to engage with each other. What we're looking for this spring are ways to do that. And so what I'd like to talk about is first, policies, and what policies, where we can and where safely we can, update, change, find ways to make them more doable for your lives. So first, out of the gate, I can almost hear the yelling and screaming now. Thank you to Dining and Campus Services. There will be to-go options in the Commons and the Pavilion. I appreciate student voice on this. I appreciate the desire, appreciate our colleagues who are making that possible. So confirming that to be a change that we believe students you have asked for and we are thrilled to give you. Second, after move-in, after immersive testing, thank you to housing and thank you to the multiple student voices who advocated for this. When our numbers are safe, we will re-examine the housing visitation policy. Third, with unbelievable thanks to our registered student organizations who programmed and led and gathered students in the most creative ways this fall, we will work with the city as we understand what gathering numbers are safe so that we can align our campus gathering numbers in ways with the city that provide better opportunities for registered student organizations, campus programmers to create exciting, fun student gatherings for all of us. As I think about gatherings, that makes me think of the second way that we can think about changes in the spring. And it has everything to do with how we look at these enhanced events. Again, grounded in the numbers that are safe, we look forward to hosting, holding, shaping our environment in more exciting ways. Everything from weekly moments of surprise on McAllister to outdoor movies, outdoor music, using Pocket Park, using Brown Field, using Church and Stadium. How do we use these beautiful spaces we have on campus to bring together each other safely in ways that we can celebrate our community? Finally, we look forward to greater resources of space and support to our registered student organizations to enable and empower them to bring more programs to their particular communities. Third, we kind of go from what might we do to celebrate and bring our community together back to the smaller, more intimate events that we have heard from many of you are truly the places where you are able to connect one-on-one with someone else. And we will find ways for financial and human resources to increase this programming. That's everything from campus recreation's outdoor adventure trips that have sold out to the LBC's jaunt trips into the city and the crafting hands-on makers night in the LBC. All of these programs have been significantly successful at bringing together small groups We will find ways to scale those up so it's not limited to just the first ones who signed up. We look forward to the possibilities of these changes. Again, they're going to be grounded in the choices we all make. This is a responsive, reciprocal agreement to build our community safely and with greater engagement. As I think about these possibilities, I also think about two very specific thoughts that I have in closing. And they are, one, we can't wait to see you brand new students. We can't wait to welcome you to campus, and you will have a new student orientation that guides you through this transition and welcomes you to campus, both virtually, but also in person and directly connected to incredible upper class students who are ready to welcome you. Second, we're excited to welcome any woman who is looking forward to going through the sorority recruitment process. What you should know first and foremost is to follow the housing guidelines. What housing is telling you will allow you to go through recruitment. So there are not two different policies or procedures in this process. We also will have webinars the week of December 7th with specific details to walk through. And so please know that whatever we get to today or don't get to today, I, my colleagues, and these webinars will be at your service to answer all those details that you may have. Thank you very much. Back to you, President Fitz.
Thank you, Laura. Obviously, a lot of new initiatives on the plate for the spring semester. As you can see in general, we started with sort of an approach for the fall semester. We reassessed many things during the fall. We've taken feedback, we've looked at what was helpful, what was successful. And in the spring semester, we're building on that with a number of changes across the board to really continue to support what makes Tulane special, the relational culture, the academics that occur, the one-on-one contacts across the campus, while protecting the health and safety of everybody. So with that, I think we should now turn to you and answer. I'm sorry, Anna probably has the answer.
I do. The form to choose satisfactory, unsatisfactory will be available on November 30th and will remain open until December 4th.
Which is the last day of classes, finals, I mean. So through finals period, students will have the opportunity to designate a class satisfactory, unsatisfactory.
Right, an extra class.
An extra class.
Extra class.
And I saw one question, an extra class each semester, just to be clear. So you'll get a second SU in the fall and another second SU option in the spring.
Just a note, this is a recognition of how stressful this fall semester is in the entire challenges that everybody is facing. And so as part of that, the faculty has agreed that to add an additional satisfactory, unsatisfactory to the program. So anyway, thank you. So with that, we'll turn it open for questions and to Carrie Stockwell.
Hey, the first question is about fatigue and homesickness. With no spring break, how will Tulane combat fatigue? This semester has already been difficult without being able to go home for fall break.
I want to turn that probably over to Erica, but I want to say everybody across the entire society has been stressed. And obviously it's very difficult for students as part of this. And we are keenly aware of that and trying to think through ways to relieve that stress. So Erica?
So, I mean, I think we're starting from a place where we have pretty good support services kind of on the whole. So we're starting from a pretty good spot. But I think, what we learned this semester is we really have to be creative in terms of how we deliver these services and get students connected to those services. And so, I think one piece of this is certainly support. Like we need to make sure that students are being connected when they are in need. And so, I don't know if we mentioned this or not, but we have an online reporting system where students and faculty and staff and everybody reports when they're worried about someone. And that has been in overdrive this past semester. And the good thing about that is, we talk a lot about having this community of care where people really step up and look out for each other. It's really happening. And so we're able to reach out. We also hear from parents. This is going to be in the spring, much as it was in the fall, a real group effort. We're also looking at some kind of more innovative things that we can bring on board for the spring that will, add some. Yeah, I saw someone mention something about mindfulness, some different ways of helping students kind of learn to manage some of the low level stresses for themselves. And so we're looking at a lot of different things, and the break will give us some time to hopefully figure out some new kind of innovative strategies that we can add to our kind of already robust programs around this.
I should note that we are taking those days of spring vacation and sprinkling them as individual days off during the semester, because we recognize the need for people to sort of get away and relax. We just can't allow everybody, in a sense, to leave campus and come back. And that's the reasoning behind not holding a spring vacation.
And that was loud and clear. I think we heard from parents and students that the days off, and faculty, and frankly us, that the days off during the semester were pretty important.
We have several questions about testing. The first about antibodies. Will antibody tests be available to students so they can avoid future quarantine?
So,
Scott?
yeah, so we have been able to do antibody tests now. We're actively talking about how we might do that at the arrival center in addition for students who want it. It's unclear though exactly how we can use that to opt out of quarantine at this point. That's another one of those pieces that we've been actively working with our colleagues in the School of Medicine and discussing what options might be available. So more to come on that as the science evolves and we're able to figure out how we can use data.
There's another question about enforcement of testing. How is testing enforced? The person said, I've heard mentions that some students don't show up for their tests. Are there repercussions for noncompliance?
We can tag with Erica on this one, but we send out non-compliance letters regularly through Campus Health, and then if no responses, then it goes to the Office of Student Conduct. Compliance is hard because of the frequency of testing, so it's been a challenge. But I think majority of students have actually been really good about getting their tests done when they needed to be done. But there are repercussions if you're not.
Another question about health and safety. Given that we still have a Mardi Gras break, what will Tulane be doing to avoid a spike in COVID-19 cases during that season, particularly after the large spike during the Halloween season?
I would say we are actively taking suggestions for that. So feel free to email me any ideas you have. But in all seriousness, I think we know this is going to be an issue. And so we are going to work to provide opportunities for our students to engage in safe ways with Mardi Gras. One of the things, I don't know if President Fitz mentioned this or not, but New Orleans is a pretty cool city. So they've canceled Mardi Gras, but they're thinking of other ways to kind of have some sort of celebration that's safe. And so, helping our students also figure that out is going to be, it's a massive undertaking. Now, we also will do what I do, which is message to students about, their behavior during this time and the consequences that will come from not complying with what we're asking them to do. And I should also say I think we've all been really proud of our students. We have had some issues though. And when we've had those issues, we've dealt with them really quickly. Basically we've done what we said we were going to do. And so, we need to continue that. And I think folks are getting tired of all of this. I think the fatigue is also not just in terms of their mental health. It's also just in terms of compliance. People, not just students either, by the way, like you can walk around town and see this happening. But, I think, people need to kind of come back with a renewed sense of we're all in this together and we really have to do our part, whether you've had it or not. Like it's an important piece. And so I think, I think the Mardi Gras thing is something that gives us all a lot of, concern, but I think we've kind of challenged our students to rise to the occasion around behavior. And there were some slip ups around Halloween, but by and large over the semester, they did it. And so I think if we give them good outlets and help them understand how to do this in a safe way, I think they will.
I would also add that the one part that we have already built into the schedule is increased testing around the Mardi Gras period so that we catch and get ahead of any potential spread. I think that was a lesson that we learned this year after a couple of the surges that we saw, more frequent testing. And because we have I mean, we have almost 3 or 4 times the capacity of testing that we did when we started last August. So we've learned a lot and how to mobilize that resource for these scenarios like this.
So let me just add that we learned a lot from the fall semester. Halloween was an issue, but the complications of Halloween is it literally followed the hurricane, so that there was no testing over the period because of the hurricane. And we understand that our testing capacity is critically important in getting ahead of issues like that, as well as Erica points out, behavior.
We have some questions about teaching. If a class was listed as in person during registration, can the professor decide to change that to 100% virtual?
It's a complicated question. I mean, certainly if there are ways a professor can request to do so if there are clear pedagogical reasons to do so. You know, it is the case that our faculty and students keep learning even through the semester, and some decided that under the circumstances it was best to change the modality of the course. It wasn't always from on ground to online or it just changed the modality of the course in some way. So there are ways to do it, but no, it's not in a kind of a whimsical kind of just I changed my mind kind of way. So, some of the issues we faced in the very early fall, where we had new classrooms, we had new technology, we had new everything. And so there was more of that changing my mind given the reality of the circumstances the faculty were working with, and what that should not happen in the spring. I think everyone is better prepared for the spring. Everyone has greater knowledge of what the classroom and the technology can provide, and what constraints they're operating under. And I think that the choices folks are making are much better informed. But that said, I mean, we're going to continue to learn lessons throughout the semester. And if there's a compelling reason to consider an alternative, again, not just going online on ground, but to improve the learning environment for the class, that will something that we could consider.
Some questions about remote learning. Will remote learning be available for students who don't feel safe? And what is the process for students who are on campus in the fall who wish to transition to remote for the spring?
Yeah, it will still be available, much like it was for the fall. As I mentioned, about a third of our classes, just under a third, to be honest, will be offered in a fully online manner. And those will be the options for students who choose to study remotely. And there is a form for students to fill out to request remote learning status. And I'll have to hand it over to either Erica or Anna, who have been closer to the ground on the construction of the process.
Anna, do you want to?
Erica, you go first. Talk about what we did in the fall, because they'll be familiar to some people, and then I'm looking up some information.
Yeah, so I think it's effectively the same thing. You have to identify that you want to study online, and then you'll work with your academic advisor. The student works with their academic advisor to find classes that fit with their plan of study. And the complicating factor is if they didn't know that they were going to do that before they left, in order to make arrangements with housing and residence life. And if they didn't do that, my recommendation is that you reach out to me, and we'll try to coordinate getting their belongings back home. I think that's but that should be the only barrier. There are also situations where students, if they have, a condition that would be covered under the ADA, they can go through the Goldman Center, and we can help kind of figure out their schedule in a different way. And that's an option for those students. And anybody can go through the process to see if they qualify for that. But the online process, the process to designate yourself an online learner is pretty simple. Now, I will also add, if you are going to be an online learner, one of the things that's been problematic this semester is that's not intended for people who just want to come to campus and do everything that they can, but they just don't want to go to class online. In fact, classes are probably the safest place a student could be on our campus. And so, one of the things that we want to be clear about is, this is really intended for students who are uncomfortable in that situation and or have reasons that they can't be in that situation. So, that if you're a remote learner, you don't have access to you can't eat on campus, you can't come to the bookstore, you can't use the library. There are, you know, disadvantages with being in New Orleans and trying to be a remote learner. And we're happy to talk through any of that with you guys who are considering that plan.
And let me just add a couple things. First of all, students should make this decision both thoughtfully and in advance. Some students had a rough start to the fall because they changed their mind in one direction or the other, leading to some confusion, both you know, for their faculty and for us in terms of the best ways to support them. Secondly, remote learners, it is for the 2/3 of the classes that are on ground. They can request of faculty whether they can be taken remotely. That should be all viewed as an exception. And those courses are not designed to be taken remotely. So even when that permission is granted, students should understand it's not the ideal ways in which to participate in those classes. So when we offer that opportunity, I mean, everyone should understand those faculty are going out of their way to offer an opportunity that wasn't designed for the student, as we often do. But our strong recommendation is that when a student is studying remotely, they restrict their course list to those classes that the third of the classes that were designed to be offered in a fully remote fashion.
Having said that, the faculty have been very accommodating to students who desperately need a particular class because they're upperclassmen and they need a particular class for their major. So please reach out to your advisors. The classes where faculty have made the class potentially available to remote learners are listed in the schedule of classes that's online. And
but again, please do it all as soon as you can before the start of the semester.
Right, and the forms for choosing online remote learning are available on the NTC website as well. We could post links on the Q&A later. I mean, on the FAQs later.
We have a graduate student question. I believe this is from Mike Cunningham. It says, graduate students have struggled to complete labs and related assignments in a remote environment. How should graduate students seek assistance? They're unclear about where to find support.
That's a really good question, and many graduate students have this, especially students who do field work. It's been an incredibly difficult semester. First, you have to work with your PI, your advisor, to sort of do some things. There are many students who are doing a meta-analysis type research now, where that's mainly systematic reviews in the library. Until that happens, people are looking to archival data sets to use for data analysis and those kinds of things. But you really have to work with your advisor to sort of do some of those things. And that's the same thing also for remote teaching and remote classes for graduate students too. If you are a graduate student, you want to do remote, you still have to fill out the form. And you have to see if those classes will be available to you remotely. And many graduate classes are seminars. And so it's kind of difficult to have a seminar where you sit around and discuss things in a remote way. But there are some larger graduate professional classes where it would be possible.
We have a question for Laura Osteen. Can you comment on sorority rush and move-in? Will students go straight to campus? And what is the date of move-in for students participating in recruitment?
I would love to. So building on my very short statement in the beginning, one of the pieces that is significantly different this year than in past years is because of the Arrival Center, all first-year women will come in and move into both the Arrival Center and housing before sorority recruitment begins. And so as your student may or may not be deciding whether or not to go through recruitment, if you follow housing's guidelines, your first-year student will be on campus in time. And so hopefully that is one less stressor to have, that sorority recruitment women aren't moving in early this year. Women and returning women are simply moving in first this year. And so that's the piece about if you follow housing's guidelines, you will be on campus in time for sorority recruitment to begin. The exception to that, and an email went to every single sophomore woman on campus, identified woman on campus, is that if you are a sophomore student and interested, we would like you to register now, connect with us now so that we know that, so that we're ensuring you are on campus on time. If you're a first-year woman, though, interested or possibly not interested, you are not locked into that decision at this point in time. Your housing date will get you to campus on time to go through sorority recruitment. The recruitment process will then occur in a hybrid nature. Most of the events will be virtual, so you will use Zoom to connect with women in the chapters, to have events to go through that process. You will have in-person, very small group one-on-one, and then in small group opportunity to connect with a recruitment counselor so that you are supported throughout the process, including our incredible fraternity and sorority staff and myself that will be there throughout the process. And that will all occur before classes begin. And so there's a window from after your move-in time to before classes start that recruitment will happen in a hybrid nature for returning women who are a part of the process, and then incoming first-year students and returning students who are going through the process.
Okay, next question. Back to testing for a second. Will T-SHIP cover a COVID-19 test off campus, for example, in a student's hometown prior to coming back for the spring semester?
Yes, it should. There shouldn't be a problem with that.
Okay, a follow-up question on testing. How should off-campus students proceed for pre-semester testing? I know this was touched on with the Arrival Center, but maybe just a quick revisit.
So we'll be sending out a testing instruction email, much like we did in August, that will outline all of the protocols. And then we'll be sending the orders like they're getting now that'll tell them when they can start going on campus for testing. There's a schedule built so that we can accommodate people on different times because it's a little more complicated. So it's going to be a bit different, but there'll be detailed instructions coming out, deciding on when they're going to come out, if it's at the end of the semester in January, but we'll be providing that very soon.
There's a question about study abroad. What is the thought about study abroad for fall 21? Deadlines are January/February to apply. Do you think there will be study abroad?
Anna should take that. Yeah.
It'd be a great joy to make, for me personally, to make study abroad possible again. And we will, as soon as it is feasible. As most of you know, we have a host of countries with closed borders. A host of countries have recently gone back to lockdown. Countries also with uncontrolled surges and precarious healthcare facilities. So we cannot give you a definitive answer. I would love to be able to say, yes, we'll be abroad fall 2021. And hopefully with vaccines becoming widely available, that will be a reality. Above all, for study abroad, we want to preserve not only the health and safety of our students going abroad, but also making sure that they have a good study abroad experience. I really don't want to send a student to a country that's in lockdown where they're going to be stuck in a dorm room doing classes online. That's not an abroad experience. So we do have a process in place that we've had in place since the fall. And also we enacted that process for the spring, in which students can petition to be allowed to go abroad to certain countries where normally we will not be allowing students to go. For example, there's so many students who are dual citizens who actually have family in the country they were hoping to study abroad in, where if anything goes wrong, they would have a large support network. Anyway, there are a host of other issues that we consider for the petition process. Not very many students have taken advantage of that, or we have approved, but a handful have. So we're making progress on that. Hopefully we can begin studying abroad. I'm optimistic, right? Call me Pollyannish, in the summer. That's my big hope.
We have a question about campus recreation. Will there be expanded access to the gym? They're asking about the pools, basketball courts. Will some programming include exercise outdoors or other activities to relieve stress and anxiety?
Ryan?
Yes, so the campus recreation's working hard to figure out how we can bring online the basketball courts. Basketball is a huge huge sport on our campus, and normally during a normal year, students use it a lot. So that's one. Number two, we're looking on how we can expand access, going from 80 people in an hour to possibly 100 to 120 people an hour. But clearly everything that we'll do at campus recreation will be informed by the health and safety protocols put in place by the institution so that we don't have any issues. So our goal is to move towards that. In regards to the swimming pool remains closed due to some mechanical and structural issues that we're working through. And it's our hope that we can bring that back online as soon as possible down the road.
We have a question about off-campus students. What is your advice to an off-campus student who has roommates that do not practice safe COVID practices? It is very stressful and students don't want to get into conflicts with one another.
We unfortunately had a bit of that this fall. And, I think what I would recommend is that the student who's in that situation connect with our office, case management and victim support services specifically, so that we can help them kind of navigate that conflict. I don't think there's a way for us to protect them completely from, the conflict, but I think there's a way for us to help support them through it and make sure that, that if the conflict's not being resolved, that we can help them find a resolution. It is complicated though. I mean, when you're signing leases with off-campus property managers and landlords, we don't have a lot of control there. So, we really, the kind of mediation piece of it is really important.
Question, if a vaccine becomes available, will Tulane make adjustments to allowing spring break or travel or additional days off?
Let me say, to be honest, probably not, because first of all, changing an academic calendar midstream is incredibly difficult. People make all kinds of plans months in advance on the basis of the dates and deadlines we put into the calendar. Secondly, I think just to be realistic, there's a difference between a vaccine becoming available in the abstract and a vaccine becoming widely available to all members of our community. As I understand it from public health experts, it will be rolled out according to risk levels of the population. And so, healthy 20-year-olds will probably not be among the first to get access. And so I don't think we should have unrealistic expectations about, for example, all of our students having access to the vaccine before the end of the semester. So the short answer is probably not. I don't expect to see changes to the academic calendar once the semester gets underway.
Okay,
Let me say, agree absolutely that the calendar just will not change as a result of the vaccine. We don't know how soon the vaccine will be widely available, and we certainly could see circumstances in which it might be widely available by April, and that could certainly affect certainly the restrictions on campus and in other areas. It's not going to change the calendar, but it might have an effect on issues of visitation and crowds and so on. And we've talked a lot about, we certainly would recommend everyone who's part of the Tulane community have the vaccine and take the vaccine, though we recognize there may be religious or health reasons that people would not want to take it.
Laura, after you spoke about sorority recruitment, we had some follow-up questions about fraternities. Do you want to touch on that?
Sure. My apologies. It's much later in the spring semester. And so as you think about move-in, arrival center, and getting settled for our incredible young men who are interested, and for your families, that's not something you need to hold on to as you first move in. It will occur this spring, and it will occur in COVID-safe guidelines that we can walk through. It will be similar to some of the events that happened this fall on campus through IFC recruitment. It will be continued in spring, but will not occur until late January, February.
There's a question about service learning. It says service learning this semester was less than ideal. Looks like this will continue. What is going to happen to assist students in this area?
The Center for Public Service has been very engaged in trying to reinvent what public service and engagement with the community can mean in a time of COVID. As you may very well imagine, when we're trying as hard as we can to keep our students on campus and our campus community safe, we cannot send our students wildly out into the community, nor do our community partners necessarily want our students, right? A lot of community partners have said, we're closed, see you in a year. So there has been a lot of imaginative thinking and imaginative reinventing of what public service can look like at a moment like this. A lot of it involves engaging with community partners through virtual means, since community placements are not readily available. We're doing our best to increase the possibilities and to create more varied possibilities for public service, but we can only do what we can do given health conditions.
I'll just add that this is a continually evolving story, as Anna said, and yeah, we are doing our best. But I think if you look at what's happening across campus, it's a very interesting, innovative, kind of creative enterprise.
A question about academic advising. It says my student has reported several challenges with undergraduate academic advising. Are there any plans to improve this in the spring?
It's hard for me to respond without knowing precisely what the challenges are that were identified. Academic advising, like everything, like teaching itself, was done in new and innovative and experimental ways for students who are both present here and engaging remotely. Like I mentioned, for faculty and classrooms, there are a lot of lessons learned and improvements in mind for the spring. But again, I can't say much more without knowing the specifics. But certainly, you know, one of the things they're doing, for example, and what I don't know if this addresses the concerns in mind, is scheduling more outdoors meetings, having more identified outdoor spaces and furniture for advisor meetings, both one-on-one and in small groups, so that there's more in-person engagement between advisor and student. Which comes a little closer to replicating what was done in the past.
I would also say if there are specific challenges that you want to make sure are addressed, if you you can shoot me an email and I'll connect you with the people who oversee advising directly, and you can make sure that those concerns are heard by them.
Question for Brian Johnson. This one says, when will Spring Scholar students find out their housing assignments?
Great question. We hope to have their assignments by December 18th. So they should be on the lookout for that very soon over the next few weeks.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. One asks, will a parent be able to help the student on their move-in day back into their rooms?
Okay, we're really, if it's a parent of a new student, so a spring scholar or a student that was not here in the fall, yes. You know, we can make, if there's special arrangements that need to be made. We highly discourage it though, because hopefully our students that were here in the fall did not move all their belongings outside of, out of their residence hall and take them home. So the majority of our students should have left their things in their room. So they should have very little need in terms of moving a ton of things in. We want to try to limit movement on campus as much as possible and the amount of people we have on campus, so that we can start off in a great way in the spring. So that question's also answered on our website as well, and I'm happy to take any special requests or special situations under consideration.
Okay, I think final question, are you able to switch? I think they mean, is a student able to switch to online learning partway through the semester?
Let me say the short answer is no, but that said, we will work with any student at any time to help them address whatever issues they were having. And so if there's simply deciding kind of, I'm afraid whimsically, I'd rather, you know, be working from home, poses extraordinary challenges. And it's very likely there is, with the exception of the fully online courses, those third, there is no guarantee the other classes can be continued or completed when studying remotely. So even if there is a compelling reason, all we can do, with the exception of ADA accommodations, which are in their own specific category, if a student has a reason for leaving campus and studying remotely, we can help them work with the faculty to explore whether it's possible to continue their on-ground classes from a distance, but it simply may not be possible. And so there are certainly no guarantees to that effect.
And I think sometimes even when faculty members have been willing to try to be accommodating, the students' experience once they've done that hasn't been exactly what they wanted it to be. So really, it's not simply like we just don't want to be accommodating. It's that really we've seen some times in which that doesn't go well for the student.
So I think that may be the answer to the last question. I'm sure many people have more questions. I'm sure you'll have more questions as time goes on. We'll be putting out more memos across the university explaining the details of coming back in the spring semester, answers to frequently asked questions. So this is sort of the beginning of a discussion of the spring semester. So I want to thank everyone. I want to underscore that how extraordinary the challenges are of coming back and giving on-ground education in a socially distanced, safe way. And as you can see from the questions asked and the answers, the entire Tulane community is deeply coming up with inventive, creative ways to ensure that the education that everyone treasures about Tulane continues, and that the engagement between students continues, and that we do it in a safe way. And so I want to start out by thanking everybody who's been part of this panel, because as you can see, this is a great group of administrators and faculty who have really thought creatively about what we can do and responded. So again, I'll just go through each of you, and I hope you'll raise your hand when I note. Thank you, Brian Johnson in housing, Robin Foreman as provost, Laura Osteen as campus life, Mike Cunningham for graduate students, Lee Ham, head of the medical school and medical center, Anna Lopez, overseeing faculty in the provost's office, Scott Timms, student health, campus health. I should note, Scott has a bad back at the moment, which has required him to lie down. So we hope he feels better. And then finally, last but not least, Erica Woodley, Dean of Students at Tulane. So I want to thank all of you. There are many other individuals who are part of the Tulane administration who've just done an extraordinary job in terms of the finances and administration. And I just want to give a shout out to them, and an incredible thank you. And also a thank you to the entire Tulane community. The students have been an incredible part of this fall semester and its success. I know it's been difficult, I know it's been different, but every institution, every person in America is trying to figure out how to maintain their life and what's important about their life in these circumstances, and you have been great. And so I want to again do a shout out and a congratulations to the student body. We're all looking forward to the spring semester and the continuation of what makes Tulane a great institution, which is the educational that occurs in New Orleans. So thank you all. Stay safe and have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. So long.